EG4's big new 314 amp hour wall mount battery is here in an all-weather version. It's got the Gen 3 BMS that we really liked in the first indoor version, but it also kind of feels like EG4 has been maybe a little bit quick to the gun with the release of these batteries. There's been a couple more issues with some of the newer stuff than we're used to seeing with EG4 products, and if you're trying to add one of these to a system that you already have, it might not make any sense at all. So welcome back to the lab where our opinions cannot be bought. We already made a full video on the indoor version of the 314 amp hour battery. And since we made that video, EG4 has made a bunch of changes to the Gen 3 BMS that are just downloadable software upgrades. A lot of them have made features a lot better for us. Some of them made features a lot worse. We'll get into both of those today. We have had this here at the lab for a little while, and we feel like we are ready to share our opinion and experiences with this. But before we share our experience with you guys, let's get you up to speed with a super quick spec teardown on the all new all weather 314 amp hour battery. So first up, this thing fails the tiny baby lift test. It weighs in at 309 pounds, which is 15 pounds more than the indoor version. These bigger batteries have 314 amp hours or 16 kilowatts of storage, but they maintain the same 200 amps of continuous output. These batteries are 48 volts, and you can pair up to 32 of them together as long as you're pairing Gen 3 BMS with Gen 3 BMS, which means you can get a total of up to 512 kilowatt hours of storage, which is enough to power Manhattan. Not really, but maybe Manhattan's basement. This battery is UL listed and it has an IP67 rating, which means it's obviously dustproof and waterproof. The IP67 means it can actually withstand floods. The 280 amp hour version was actually IP66 rated, which is only like high pressure water jets. So if you're gonna put this beside the ocean in Florida, you're probably better off going with this one than the smaller version. The all-weather version is heated. It has the same heaters as the indoor version, which makes sense because if you just throw it in your garage, it can get just as cold as being just outside of your garage. Those heaters are a step up again from the old 280 amp hour batteries. It's about 448 watts of consumption just to run the heaters, which is a pretty substantial amount of power. But the good news is your battery will stay warm enough to continue to function. Those heaters are programmed to turn on at 0 degrees Celsius and turn back off at 3 degrees Celsius. So basically it should keep your battery from ever falling below freezing. Like I said earlier, it has a max discharge of 200 amps or just a little bit over 10,000 watts, but it only has a maximum charge rate of 157 amps, which is just over 8,000 watts. So you can actually not put power into this as fast as you could take it out. If we take a look at the actual build of this battery, it's very similar to all of EG4's wall-mounted batteries pretty much. It does have the extra terminal on top. It's got an actual stud connection, as well as the 4 quick connects for both positive and negative terminals. Each terminal is rated for about 250 amps, which is pretty significant. And you can see in between those terminals, you have all of your communication ports. These are all threaded, which is what helps give it its all-weather rating. So your dry connections and all of your communication ports, RS-485s, are all up top. On the left side, you can see right here, we have little handles, which are actually improved over last generations. These ones are easier to grab and pick up. They're not so sharp. You also have your breaker on the side right here, and then your BMS on and off button. On the right-hand side, you have your threaded adapter for your antenna, because while the Gen 3 BMS is all fancy and new, you now need this giant antenna to communicate with the new app, because before you were communicating only with the inverters. You couldn't actually talk to the battery. Gen 3 BMS, you can talk to the battery, but you need this giant, feels like it's 1706 antenna that is supposed to magnet to the side. 2 bolts on each side, which are for little threaded eyelets that you could actually thread into here to help you lift it up with an engine hoist or whatever you have, straps and 6 friends to help you move this thing around, which is pretty cool. On the back, you have your wall mount plate, nothing fancy. And on the front, you just have your battery indicators. So you have a standard 25, 50, 75, 100%. That's it. Nothing else. Overall, the rest of the build, super simple. You have your adjustable feet, which allows you to put this inside of the boss box. If you have an older one without the adjustable feet, it doesn't actually work inside of there. And if you go ahead and peel the front cover off, you guys can see everything is like Fort Knox in here. It's all weather sealed up, nice and tight. And it's actually double layered, so the front wall itself isn't necessarily watertight, but the secondary layer is watertight. In here is where you can see the new Gen 3 BMS. Just looks like wires. There's about 100 screws to get it on and off. Temperature sensors, fire arresters, everything like that is inside of this, which is what makes it UL listed. Looking at the app, there's actually 2 now that you can use, and we'll get into those in just a minute. And right now, at the time of filming, with our discount code, this battery is $4,175, which is EG4's most expensive wall mount battery to date. The first thing that we really like about the new all-weather battery is that they actually stepped up the IP rating to 67. On previous models, it was only 65. And basically, the 67 rating just means that this is now able to withstand actual floods and not just like high-pressure jets. You're able to submerge this battery in water and it will still work, which is huge because a lot of places that you might want to use a battery like this are subject to hurricanes, tornadoes, natural disasters where water might just come rushing in, and having your battery be like all weather but still getting fried because it's not protected against floods sucks. So the fact that this one has a step up, we actually think is a really, really big feature. We also really like the Gen 3 BMS inside of this battery. Basically, the new battery monitoring systems in all of these batteries have removed the dip switches and protocol switches that we're used to seeing on all solar batteries in the past, and it'll ID and protocol set itself when connected to other Gen 3 BMS units. So if you were to buy 4 of these and string them all together, connect them to your inverter, they will talk to themselves, set themselves up, and it's actually a lot less work for whoever's installing them, which is nice because it makes it a little bit more DIY friendly. Doing this stuff is actually a lot easier than you would think, but the like finicky, annoying parts is always like setting up the battery, getting the protocols right, making sure everything communicates. Having them communicate with each other and not having to do anything about it is sweet. The only drawback is that it seems like our recommendation to produce a communication cable that goes from the new Gen 3 BMS to any older Gen 2 BMS, like the 280 amp hour batteries that we're used to seeing, that recommendation to make a cable that you can buy from EG4's website seems to have fallen on deaf ears because we still don't have it. And the issue is if you have a bunch of 280 amp hour batteries and you buy a 314 and you want to run it in line with your system, you actually have to repin a communication cable yourself to make it be able to speak with those older batteries because the Gen 3 can't auto protocol with the Gen 2. It's a whole thing. We wish it was a little bit easier because if you want to evolve and grow your system over time, you may have had an older battery, now you want to get a newer one. It's a small thing that most people can do, but most people probably don't want to. The new battery monitoring system does have some pros that make up for it though. It has faster active cell balancing, which means that the battery cells inside of here are able to communicate with each other a little bit quicker, more efficiently. It gives you a more efficient use when you're using the battery. It also means that the lifespan of the battery significantly increases over previous lifespans. Basically just means your money is going to be well spent because this battery will last longer than an older 280 amp hour version. It also means that you can now update these batteries over the air, which is actually a bigger deal than you might think. Historically, you've always had to bring a laptop out, plug a cable from your computer into the battery, update each battery independently, or you have to download it onto like a little dongle, the software update, and then plug the dongle into each battery, make the battery update, do all that kind of stuff. With this new battery monitoring system, you're actually able to go in through the app and basically do updates over the air. So you can just be inside of your house on your computer, send the update to the battery updates itself, and you don't have to do much work at all. The only issue is that that's not fully available for everybody yet. We were given access to it. It was great. It made Dylan's life way easier. Everybody was happy about it, but we were told that they haven't made it fully available to the public yet. It'll just look a little different than we originally showed in our indoor version, and then even some of Signature Solar's videos have showed because they've changed the software a little bit, but it's still going to be available, and that's a really nice feature to have. And if you were to actually compare this to the older 280 amp hour all-weather battery, a couple nice improvements is that this, for one, is the exact same size casing. They haven't gotten any bigger with these new 314 versions, but there's way more storage capacity inside of them, which is huge. It's nice to not have to take up a bigger footprint, but still get more storage. And the other one had like those removable grills on the side. You had to pop them off to access your handles, your breakers, your buttons, your communication ports, everything. Basically, that whole battery was designed to sit underneath the conduit box, whereas this one is designed to be just used. You could just throw this thing outside and it would work, which is sweet. It just makes setting it up and working with it a little bit simpler. And the best part about this battery is the results we got during all of our testing here at the lab. Of course, in terms of efficiency, it was 100% efficient. All batteries should be. If you have a battery that is not, you have a problem. Most power loss always comes from the inverter and other things down the line. Your battery should always be 100%. We also found that this thing does charge at the rated 157 amps, and it will actually charge from 0 to 99% in just over 2 hours, which is important because to get it from 0 to full, or basically from that 99% to 100%, is another hour. So it takes about 3 hours and 30 minutes roughly to charge this thing from 0 to 100, but you can get it to 99% in 2 hours and 15 minutes in our testing, which is actually pretty impressive. And in terms of surging, it handled everything we threw at it really, really well. It's rated to run 200 amps continuous. We were surging it up in around 250 amps, and it would run that for more than just a blip. Like, it would actually run things for a couple seconds before it turned off. But that's not a total surprise because EG4 has been known, at least here, to perform really well in our surge testing. This is the part where the sunshine and rainbows goes away and the dark clouds come out, because not everything with this battery was perfect. And the first thing that we just still really don't like about these new batteries is that there is no screen at all. I understand not putting a screen on, it cuts costs, and it's not always necessary if you're gonna monitor this from an app or a computer or something like that. But there is little things like when you have an error code. You can't just see what the error code is directly on the battery. You have to go inside, fire up your computer, go on the program, see what the error code is, and oftentimes it's something that you could have just corrected while you were outside in the garage. That's one thing I really miss about having screens on batteries, is just a quick glance, figuring out the problem without even touching a device. So while it is nice that you still get your little charge indicator screen on the top, it would be nice to have a little bit more information given to you from the actual battery itself. A solid recommendation from us to you guys is, if you do have a system like this, set up the Bluetooth portion of the app immediately, because if you didn't have the Bluetooth portion set up, and the most common time you're gonna probably be wanting to diagnose this as a regular person is when the power goes out. You're like, oh, what's wrong? Why is my battery not working? You come outside, you realize you need to be connected to it via the app or your computer, but if the Wi-Fi is also down, you can't connect to the battery. So make sure when you get this thing, you set up the Bluetooth immediately, so that if the power is out, you can still talk to the battery and figure out any problems that you might have just realized you're having. Another thing is, like we said earlier, you can't actually update this thing over the air yet. They have said that that is in the works. You need to use their current remote monitoring software, whatever it is, to actually update this. But that software doesn't work with Mac anything. Mac OS, it just doesn't communicate. So here at the lab, we have a major issue where we don't own a single PC. We cannot update these batteries with the cable because we do not own a PC. It's very annoying that they haven't made a Mac version. I know a lot of people out there use Apple products, and they shouldn't discriminate against us. We just want to update our batteries. And we also don't like that it feels like they kind of jumped the gun when they released these new 314s. There's been a lot of back and forth that we're not used to seeing from EG4. There's been a lot of like one number on the website, a different number in the manual, another number from the technicians. When you're asking about something like how many batteries parallel, you get 3 different answers. That doesn't feel great, especially if you're trying to spend your hard-earned money on a product. You want to get a straight answer. And what we've realized is, like, as they're updating things, things are changing, which limits availability. The next update will give the availability back, but it just feels a little premature. For example, this was able to pair 32 of these in parallel with the 314s. You used to be able to pair up to 64 of the 280 amp hour batteries. Now, obviously that's enough power to power all of Texas, but it's already been cut in half when we moved up to the 314s. And now when you pair the 314s with a 280, you can only do up to 8 batteries total in your system, which is very limiting. And it's also confusing because you have one system that can do 64, another system that can do 32. When you cross-pollinate them, you can only do 8. It just feels weird. It feels like something that they could probably figure out with software updates, but it may have already bitten people who had however many 280 amp hour batteries, and they thought they would just add one of these, and it screwed the whole system up. They basically told us that because this is all digital automatic protocol dip switch settings and stuff like that, that it's limited to the 32, whereas before with the physical switches, you could select a lot more, which is their reasoning for it going from 64 to 32. Probably not that big a deal. I highly doubt most people had a system of 64 anyways. If you have a system of 32, that's already insane, but there's people out there who want to do it, so it's still important. And circling back to the whole BMS thing just for a second, I feel like that's what most of this video has kind of revolved around, but There is a group of people that won't really love that this is strictly controlled through technology. The pro with older batteries where you have physical dip switches on them and you can walk up and read a manual, figure out how to change the protocol and the ID and have it communicate with a random inverter is that one, if EG4 ever went out of business, which we don't think they're going to, but if they were to, now you have a product that fully relies on software that no one's taking care of anymore. It's just wherever it was last and that's what you get. Whereas if you had a physical settings battery, it'd be a lot easier to maneuver that into a newer system down the road. It also just gives you kind of a roadblock if you're gonna use this in a remote setting. Like if you're gonna put this at an off-grid cabin and you don't have Wi-Fi, you wouldn't be able to do all of the initial updates because a lot of the initial updates need the Wi-Fi, then you can transfer to Bluetooth use later. It's kind of confusing the way they've done it, but I understand people not loving that everything has to be done through technology, and it's kind of shifting away from feeling at least like you're in control of your system. There is a lot of comments about people saying that, you know, EG4 could just go in there and change all your battery settings without asking you. For the first time ever, I will not put on my tinfoil hat, but I'm gonna take out my tinfoil and just say, I agree with you, and I'm gonna put my tinfoil back in the drawer and I'm gonna move on, okay? I addressed it, I agree with you. They seem like good people. We really like them. I highly doubt they would do that. So at the end of the day, who is this battery for? We think it's great for DIYers, a beginner who wants a less complex commissioning, or even someone who's got more experience and just doesn't want to be bothered with setting up multiple batteries and all that kind of stuff. The fact that it'll do it all for you is huge. It's also great for installers. It makes their setup process and their job way easier at the end of the day. They're going to save a lot of time using a product like this versus having to go in and manually do it and then come back when some guy's kids ran over there and flipped all the switches because they thought it was funny. And while we talked a lot about big numbers with multiple batteries and all that, we do just love these in a very simple, a couple of batteries to power your shed, your garage, or your house type of deal. We think they're really good for that. They're just easy to work with, easy to set up. And at the end of the day, all things said and considered, we do like these batteries and we do recommend them. And we hope that all the future firmware updates, which there has been a lot of just since we've had this one, will iron this all out and make it a great product in the future. But that's pretty much all we got for you guys today. Let us know how you guys feel about the all-weather 314 amp hour battery. We will catch you guys next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out and stay charged.